Welcome to Season 5, Episode 2 of the Family Travel Australia podcast. We are Paul, Katie and Jasper from the Feel Good family. Join us as we explore this great country, Australia, its people, places and cultures.
Welcome to the Family Travel Podcast, where we share the latest in RV industry news, road trip travel, caravanning, camping, product reviews, where to go, what to see, and so much more.
Woohoo! This week we continue our bucket list road trip across the Nullarbor. We learn all about the Nullarbor nymph. We marvel at the great Australian bite. We discuss quarantine checkpoints, and we board the Spirit of Tasmania.
Woohoo!
Yes, and in the newsroom, we are discussing everything country music.
Awesome. Another jam-packed episode. I mean, it really makes you realise how big this country is when you are doing something like one of these bucket list road trips across the Nullarbor between Western Australia and South Australia. There is so much land out there.
It is epic.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've got some really amazing stats to share with you this week during our travels. Okay, we left you at Kalgoorlie, the gold capital of Australia, last week, and we're making our way to start really arguably the beginning of this road trip at Norseman, which is the commencement of the Eyre Highway, named after John Eyre, the first European to actually cross the Nullarbor Plain. And now, Norseman's an interesting place. Really, you just stop there to make sure you got plenty of fuel. And it's a good idea to fill up with fuel as much as you can at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, because as you would expect, the further into the Nullarbor you get, those fuel prices, up they go.
Oh, yes. Look, remote places, remote prices, as we say. It was around about $2 per litre for diesel.
At Norseman.
Yeah.
Which really was pretty on par with some of the remote places that we've been travelling across the last, 6 to 9 months. So not a surprise to see that price.
Not at all. I mean, it is only 186 kilometres from Kalgoorlie. So if you can leave Kalgoorlie, try saying that really quickly or after a couple, with a full tank of fuel, that would be great. To answer this question again, we get quite a lot, is what is our fuel consumption? How efficient is the Hilux towing a 3-ton van? Look, as an average, without towing the van, we get about 15 litres per 100 kilometres. So not all that efficient, really. When we are under tow with the van, that does head up to average around about 20 litres per 100 kilometres. That is, we are consuming 20 litres of diesel for every 100 kilometres travelled. Headwind or really, gusty day, or, we're really trying to push against something, then that will go up to about 22 litres per 100 kilometres.
There you go.
Okay. Now, our first stop is it's quite a long drive day for us. It's about 690 kilometres heading from Kalgoorlie across to Cocklebiddy.
Why did we choose this spot, Paul?
I just love the sound of it.
Yeah, it's a good name to say. And there is a roadhouse here at Cocklebiddy. We wanted to, have a little bit of security too on our first night crossing the Nullarbor, to feel like we weren't out there in the wilderness all alone. So the Cocklebiddy Roadhouse is a great choice. And of course, because it is a roadhouse, you can fill up with fuel. You can get yourself an awesome meal from their on-site restaurant, which I have to say was packed full of truck drivers and travellers who are doing this crossing. And it was a really beautiful old school style dining room with curtains and flowers, and it was really inviting. So they're doing a great job out there at Cocklebiddy.
Look, it's fair to say that literally from this point all the way through to Ceduna is almost lost in time. I remember crossing the Nullarbor with my parents and my 6 siblings. That was, 9 of us in a little Toyota Hi-Ace van. Unbelievable. I'm sure there weren't enough seat belts, but anyway.
There's certainly no air conditioning.
Oh, my gosh. It looked exactly the same. These places haven't changed. I mean, not even a lick of paint.
Amazing.
Yeah. But still well presented, just stuck in a time warp.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I have to say, super, super friendly, very, very welcoming. All of the staff there at Cocklebiddy, the lovely lady who served me when I went in to ask for an unpowered site for the night. Good tip. They do have a big campground that adjoins the Roadhouse area. All sites are powered though, so anticipate paying for a powered site even if you don't particularly want power. There is no water hookup though, so you do definitely need to have your tanks full when you're leaving Kalgoorlie or Norseman.
Yes, or heading from Ceduna to WA, that would be our actual number one tip.
Yeah, water is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, you're not going to really pull up and be able to fill your tank up with potable water anywhere.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay, a couple of really interesting things that struck me about Cocklebiddy was a guy in a Tesla.
Yes.
Now, he was sleeping in the Tesla. Yeah, he didn't have a powered site.
No.
But he was towing a box trailer that I believe said Australian Electric Vehicle Battery Solutions, something like that. And so I figure he was just towing a massive battery pack on the back of his Tesla.
It was a pretty unique sight to see, especially in Cocklebiddy when you look at it on the map and you realise how remote it is.
Look, I was so close to just giving a little tap on his window and saying, what the?
Yeah.
I really wanted to know what this guy's story was. I'm so intrigued by that. So if you're out there listening, Mr. Tesla driver. Yeah,
Jasper was pretty excited to see a Tesla all the way out there too.
He was. Look, the electric highway, as we call it, around Australia, it is the future. I can't wait to see where this goes. I can't wait to see electric vehicles, that evolution into tow vehicles. When is that going to happen? How are they going to do it? A lot of innovation to come.
Yeah, awesome. And if you're looking for guinea pigs, here we are.
Elon. Yeah. Another interesting story here was 2 rescued wedge-tailed eagles that had been struck by a truck many years ago. And one of the friendly staff members from Cocklebiddy Roadhouse pulled over and put them in the back of a Cortina, drove them down to Cocklebiddy, and they've built a massive aviary. These birds are now rescue birds because they are unable to fly in the wild, which, of course, if you can't do that, you can't eat. So they are now well cared for in a state-of-the-art aviary. I mean, it's an amazing complex, and the storytelling is all presented on these large interpretive boards. It's very well done.
Oh, absolutely. I was so impressed by the scale of the aviary. Reading through the Wikicamp's reviews of Cocklebiddy Roadhouse and coming across reviews that talk about these wedge-tailed eagles, I guess you can never really assume what you're going to see when you get to a place that's so remote. So this, as you said, Paul, was a world-class aviary. I mean, this aviary was better than, some of the aviaries that we have seen in zoos and wildlife parks around the country.
True.
So incredible. Must have cost a fortune.
Yeah, look, so go in and get yourself a bite to eat, hear a story or two from the Truckies. Onto the Truckies, very strangely, was a truck accident that we saw middle of the day on what is known as the 90-mile stretch of the Nullarbor. It is the longest, straightest road in Australia, 146 kilometres. And there was a truck rolled over and no police had even arrived. There was a couple of roadside workers, the lollipop, slow down. And this truck just rolled over, and then the other end of it down a bit further. And we were filming at the time through our dash cam, so you can see that footage. It was just so strange. Look, we've heard from a Western Australian police officer who saw that footage and said, look, 9 times out of 10, even though that is, yes, the longest, straightest road in Australia, it will be due to fatigue.
Yeah, it was quite confronting, I think, seeing that. And it was a big truck. I mean, obviously the engine part of the truck, the cab wasn't rolled over. It was literally one of the big trailers, box trailers, that was blocking the lane headed back to WA. And then there was another trailer on the side of the road that had obviously either survived rolling over or somehow flipped back up. So it was quite confronting to come across that in the middle of nowhere, as you say, Paul, on an incredibly epically long straight road.
It's a long way to services.
Yes,
We've spoken about this many times, and we mean emergency services, you know, police, ambulance, medics. Yeah, if you're looking for a charity, Royal Flying Doctors, dig deep, throw some money their way, because, gosh, if you need them, you'd be pretty desperate in a situation like that.
Absolutely.
So remote. So anyway, interesting. We will talk a little bit more about fatigue later in the podcast. Next, it was on to Eucla the next morning. It is located 11 kilometres inside WA, just from the South Australia-WA border.
And again, it's just one of these tiny little remote towns. You really do realise how in the middle of nowhere you are when you come across these places. We pulled in to obviously fuel up, knowing that we still had miles and miles and miles in front of us. Spoke to the lovely gentleman at the service station who was kind enough to look up on his app and tell us all of the prices of the diesel coming up along our journey.
Look, he was charging $1.99 per litre.
Pretty standard.
Yeah, the price had slightly gone down. And he said, guys, make sure you fill up. It's $2.21 at the Nullarbor Roadhouse. Wow.
Holy dooly, I know. I have said to Paul in a prior episode on our YouTube channel, we will collate the costs of our diesel fuel from our time in WA, and we will segment out the costs of this Nullarbor crossing journey as well, just to give you a little indication of what we have spent. Ouch, I can tell you it's going to hurt on diesel getting around this part of Australia, but that also helps in planning if you are intending to do this crossing.
Look, we took a little bit of a detour with Wave Rock and around Perth, and, you know, if you're looking at somewhere between 3,750 and 4,000 kilometres, 20 litres per 100 kilometres, you'll be able to do the math pretty quickly. But, yeah, it's a fair whack of our expense, particularly when we're travelling in only 1 week.
Yes, absolutely, which of course is because of our time frames to sail on the Spirit of Tas, and also because we are dodging, you know, the ever-changing craziness around the states of Australia with restrictions and lockdowns and all of those fun COVID things that you navigate when you are travelling around.
Yeah. Now back to the Nullarbor Plain, and it's not Nullarbor Plains, as our super brain 5-year-old did let me know. It's actually singular. And it was named, as I mentioned, by John Eyre. And I looked up a little bit around this story. He was the first European to cross the Nullarbor Plain.
How did he cross? Was he on foot, on horseback?
Oh, look, he wasn't in a Toyota Hilux.
With air conditioning.
That's right. I know that much. Nullarbor actually comes from the word, it's a Latin word, null meaning no, and arbor meaning trees. There's a misconception that Nullarbor is an indigenous name for no trees or no water, but not quite true. So it is actually a Latin derivative. This is what John Eyre wrote about the Nullarbor Plain in his journal. A hideous anomaly, a blot on the face of nature. The sort of place one gets into in bad dreams.
Oh, it sounds so terrible. It's not that at all.
Wow.
We were like high-fiving when we finally got to the start of the Nullarbor Plain. I mean, this entire road trip is referred to as crossing the Nullarbor, so there's a bit of a misconception there. I know I certainly, for the first day of our leg, was like, hang on a second, what are all of these trees doing around here? I thought we were supposed to see no trees. But when you get to the actual commencement of the Nullarbor Plain, boom, they're gone.
I think from memory, it's like only a 13-kilometre stretch of the road.
Yeah, it is a very small portion of this journey from state to state or across over the Great Australian Bight that is actually classed as the Nullarbor Plain. And I think that's why so many people do have that misconception. I certainly did. But stark contrast for this segment to what else you see as you are traversing this land.
What we found incredibly interesting is that the world's largest remaining temperate woodlands is located on the western side of, in Western Australia, of the Nullarbor. So you've got no trees in this one part, and then the largest, remaining woodland in the world.
And it's epic, isn't it? How many millions?
40 million acres. It in fact is larger than the size of England and Wales combined.
Incredible. So you drive through and amongst that, and then when you do get out onto the Nullarbor Plain, you're like, okay, right, yes, I can totally understand. I have to say, though, I think Mr. Eyre was a bit harsh on nature. It is a spectacle of nature. It's not too many places where you can see absolutely no trees and be in such an incredible environment. And there's still plenty of green around with all of the shrubbery and things that are growing in this region. So, I mean, I can understand he wasn't in a Hilux and conditions will have changed greatly since he crossed, but I think it's a bit harsh.
It is an amazing thing to see, actually. Just nothing. Yeah.
Definitely a tick for your road trip bucket list. I mean, this crossing of the Nullarbor state to state, the Great Australian Bight, it was high up on our ultimate road trip bucket list, and yeah, gosh, we just can't recommend it highly enough. If you've got some time, take a few days to do the crossing and check out all of the incredible natural sights.
Listen, I want to take us back to Eucla because I've looked at my notes. And, I mean, this is one of the main parts why people
best part of the story
will be listening, is the Nullarbor nymph. You heard me right. When I was a teenager, my parents took us all across there when I think I was about 13, so a fair few decades ago. And around the schoolyard, as a teenager, you hear these wild stories of naked women running across the Nullarbor. The Nullarbor nymph first entered my consciousness. Now, I said to Kate, hey, there's this Nullarbor nymph, and then you pull up into Eucla to get fuel, and there is a massive cafe structure. There's accommodation. They have a pool. I mean, it's quite amazing. And a big sign that says Nullarbor Nymph Cafe.
The legend lives on.
So, yeah, tell us that story.
Okay, I did not believe Paul at all. Being slightly younger than him, maybe I hadn't heard about the Nullarbor nymph in my schoolyard days.
Fair enough.
So I did a quick Google. I actually found an incredible Australian Geographic story that was written in January of this year that recounts this phenomenon that happened in the 1970s that really put Eucla on the map. And basically the story goes, there was a gentleman by the name of Jeff who was working in the PR and media industry. He'd lost his job. Poor Jeff, he was travelling from Western Australia over to the East Coast in the hope of finding work, and he pulls up at Eucla, as I'm sure all travellers did in the day, wanting a motel room for the night. He says to the publican, look, mate, I can't afford to pay you for my motel room. Please let me stay. How about I promise to put Eucla on the map? I will come up with the perfect media story that
Love
will
it.
bring people here for years to come. And what I think is phenomenal is that the publican said, righto then, mate, let's have a beer and see what we can come up with. So later that evening, around a few beers with the local roo shooters who have rocked on in, they hatch this plan for the Nullarbor nymph. Now, the story gets even better because they are able to convince Janice, the partner of the publican, a young blonde woman, engaged, ready to be married to this man.
Gorgeous looking lady.
Well, they convince her to strip off naked, to don a freshly culled kangaroo skin,
As you do.
and run naked and free through the environment.
The Nullarbor.
Exactly. So that they can take some photos and start this incredible legend that, however many years later, still lives on strong. So they did it. They hatched this plan. They had lots of fun doing it. They even went to enough trouble to send Janice out a number of times when they knew that tourist buses would be driving along the air highway so that the tourists would see this woman far off in the distance with her long blonde hair flowing in the breeze as she ran naked. The story says that the tourists even felt so sorry for her that they left out snacks and water on the roadside for the Nullarbor nymph. And of course, the story spread like wildfire. The media came all the way from the US, from England. Everybody poured into this tiny little town of Eucla. And the story lived strong for 6 months until I guess they couldn't keep the secret in any longer. And they let out that it was, in fact, a giant hoax, that they had made the whole thing up. But tell you what, I mean, you Google Nullarbor nymph, boom, up comes all of this incredible information and articles that live on today.
Look, it amazes us. This is probably one of the best landmark stories to draw, you know, a journey of travellers to a town, particularly as remote as this. But it is the ingredient for success. I mean, you look at all of these places that we travel around Oz. I mean, Kalgoorlie's, you know, known for its gold. It's also known to have the world's largest, tallest bin. There you go. So that people are looking for landmarks. I love the nymph story. I think it's
so clever and
you,
so
Jeff.
creative and just so funny. So if you're after a bit of a giggle and an appreciation of just how creative and clever some people can be, of course, particularly if you're working in media and PR, have a read of the Nullarbor nymph.
Listen, the publican and Janice did get married after this shoot.
They did, and in fact, the writer of the Australian Geographic article that I read that was published in January this year actually tracked Janice down. I believe she was living in South Australia. She's 75 years old. And he went and met with her and interviewed her. And the article goes on to say that she recalled fondly all the memories of the shenanigans that they got up to in that period of time with the media coming out and just how much fun they had.
Fantastic. Good on you, Janice. Good sport.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, I reckon.
It is truly amazing to think back that the road wasn't even bitumened back then, so to get international media attention and
Oh, incredible.
truly amazing.
Yeah, do you know the other thing that I find really interesting and fantastic is the number of comments that we've had come in on our YouTube channel from this episode of people recalling their memories from crossing the Nullarbor from as long ago as, you know, the 60s when the road was completely gravel the entire way, and all the different things that people recall and remember. It's been really cool to read back over those comments, and I love that that has sparked those memories for so many people.
Interestingly, the landscape hasn't changed though. I mean, the Nullarbor Roadhouse is the same as when I went through. I took some photos and sent them to my dad, and he said, looks exactly the same. We stopped on the Great Australian Bight at a cliffside camp. I mean, that landscape has not changed ever. I mean, other than the cliff crumbling away. So we really loved that experience, being able to pull the van right out onto the cliff edge of the Great Australian Bight. It's not the okay Australian Bight. It's the Great Australian Bight.
It truly is.
It is. We held on very tightly to Jasper. Unfortunately, we were planning to camp. We had received word of a severe wind warning. And so we had lunch. We got some epically good shots on the drone. There were another couple that were bunkering in. I hope they survived. Putting the drone out over the edge and looking at that cliff, and even where we were parked, you know, a good 10 metres back from the edge, you could still see where it was crumbling, you know. Yeah, the drone actually made me feel more nervous once I could actually see what we were parked on top of.
Yeah, that is a really good point, because most people who would camp there probably don't get to see that perspective of what the cliffs are looking like. It is epic and amazing, and it's almost, you know, one of those rites of passage for all Australians to be able to say that they've stood on the Great Australian Bight. I mean, the ocean is incredible, the colour, the ruggedness of it. A really good tip from us is to check your weather and anything that you need to check on your phone. Check for those alerts, the conditions, what's coming up. When you are at these roadhouses or stops, when you have service, because, of course, you are literally in the middle of nowhere. You are in the middle of Australia, right on the edge there at the Great Australian Bight. Don't expect that you're going to be picking up the phone and making any phone calls. So just check for things like severe weather warnings.
It feels like the edge of the earth.
Well, it is. I mean, just that way's what? Antarctica.
Yeah,
so
pretty well.
There's not much else happening out there.
Okay, we continue our trek on towards Ceduna. Interestingly, when you cross over the South Australia, Western Australia border heading east, there is no quarantine at this checkpoint. In fact, there was zero police presence. Heading into WA, however, there was a pretty long line of truckies. They were doing, obviously, COVID tests. There was, you know, a very, very different landscape of activity. We just sort of drove
on through. A bit like, oh, okay, that was the border.
Anyone going to say hi?
Yeah, no.
No. So we kept on going, and just before Ceduna is a place called Penong. And it's about 70 kilometres west of Ceduna, and that is actually where the quarantine checkpoint is in Ceduna. So I guess having one road, they didn't really need to put checkpoint
right on the border.
No.
Well, again, the border is so remote. So another good tip from us with your fruit and veg, if you are coming into South Australia from Western Australia, do jump online and check what you can and can't have. That quarantine biosecurity checkpoint in Ceduna, you do need to get rid of all of your fruit and veg before then, but don't throw it away when you cross the border, because as we said, you've got 5 hours or easily a few more nights camping if you wanted to be able to eat all of that up before you do get to Ceduna.
Great advice. Okay, Penong, a very quick overnight, also home to Australia's largest windmill.
Yeah, look, I really loved this little town of Penong. I mean, we rolled in late. We were tired. It had been a massive day driving.
Yeah, almost 700 kilometres.
We got to the Penong Caravan Park, which I would highly recommend as a great stop on this leg of the journey. Jenny, the caravan park owner, lived on site with her husband. Super friendly, super welcoming. We rolled in, I think it must have been 7 o'clock by then because of the time zone changes. She was cooking her dinner. I could smell it. She was so happy to welcome us. They took the time to give us all the information. Really look after travellers.
Yeah, so good. And the windmills, we rolled on out of the van park early the next morning and straight into, there'd be about 20...
It's like an outdoor windmill museum.
It is actually a windmill museum. And then the Comet, the largest windmill in Australia. Jasper loved that too. It's just, there's something about them. I think the design, the shape, the way they move, it is a really beautiful thing just to sit and watch.
Yeah, definitely. And as we said, a really unique point of interest for this town. It's also where we met the Hungerford family, who we had on the
Yes.
podcast a couple of weeks ago. So always really awesome to pull in somewhere, especially when you're tired and, you know, you're just feeling really weary, to pull in and literally pull up to another family who are so lovely, and to be able to share and swap stories. Best part of being on the road.
Yeah, we'll always remember our time at Penong. Okay, from there, we're heading now a little bit of a detour to get ourselves around Adelaide and some of the surrounding areas that were experiencing some restrictions and shutdowns to certain travellers from other states. We thought we've got to get on our ship, our sail date. So let's just get moving.
Yeah.
We went through Ceduna. There was the quarantine checkpoint, but zero police presence. Strange to us. But look, that's okay. So that then continued us on down the road to a place called Mount Remarkable.
Yeah, that's right. So we were planning on actually staying on the coast at Port Germain, just near Port Pirie, once you've come through Port Augusta. But we got tipped off, actually, by some campers at Penong who said, no, don't go there. Go out near Mount Remarkable. It's just beautiful country. And we did, and actually it was so good that we did, because as you said, Paul, things were changing rapidly in and around the greater Adelaide area. We were very aware that we wanted to steer clear as much as possible, even driving through any area that could be seen as somewhere, you know, that COVID is taking over. Exactly. So we did go out to Mount Remarkable. We stayed at the showground. Rolly, the caretaker, was fantastic, such a great character, so welcoming. I think it was $20 a night. Power and water. There was only I think 3 other vans there at the showgrounds. We literally had no neighbours.
They were another 300 metres away from us.
Yeah. It was just a really great overnight spot to pull in. We stayed hitched up, plenty of green, Mount Remarkable in the background, which was awesome, watching the clouds come and roll in over the top of that.
The bird life.
The bird life was amazing. And they have just spent a bucket load of money here at this showgrounds, putting in brand new facilities. They're currently building an incredible looking camp kitchen. They facilitate a lot of school camp groups that come in. So look, if you are out in this area, we would definitely suggest this is a great place to stay. I love camping at the showgrounds in some of these little rural towns. They're full of character. They're just awesome spots. So make sure you put that one on your list.
Yes. And thank you, Rolly, for looking after us. The next morning we were off nice and early and heading straight to Bordertown, on the border of Victoria and South Australia. There you go. The Australian naming system.
Yeah.
Bordertown.
Yeah.
On the border. Let's name it Bordertown.
This was a beautiful drive as well, because of where we were in Mount Remarkable, heading to Bordertown, avoiding Greater Adelaide. It took us through some of South Australia's prettiest countryside, and it was just a beautiful drive day, wasn't it?
Yeah, Clare Valley. How stunning. Unfortunately, we weren't able to stop.
No stopping for wine.
Yeah, do not pass go, do not drink wine.
No.
Keep driving.
Yes.
Bordertown. Okay, this caravan park, empty.
Yes, surprisingly so. And the lovely lady that I spoke to on reception said, we just can't get over how quiet it has been. Normally, of course, we're jam-packed with travellers coming in and out between the states. It was very quiet.
Very popular place normally, because this is 450 kilometres on a direct drive straight into Port Melbourne to catch the Spirit of Tassie. And so people coming from Tassie or entering into Tassie from South Australia can obtain a transit pass. That's what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this was current for the time of year that we were travelling, which was early December 2021. We required that transit pass as part of our border passes and travel plans to transit through and get on the ship to Tasmania, you would need to jump on to the Tasmania COVID website to check the new conditions now, but very easy to do and all online. And look, I have to say, for as stressful as it felt at times trying to plan our routes from Western Australia through South Australia and then, of course, on to Tasmania, navigating those websites and finding the different conditions was very easy and took a lot of that anxiety out of it. So do use those resources because they are there. They're updated all the time and that will really help you plan out what you need to do.
Yeah, great advice. Okay, crossing the next morning, we started, it was 6 degrees Celsius. So, we've literally gone from WA, high 30s and now we're at 6 degrees. And
prepping us for Tassie, Del.
Yeah, that's right. And 0 police presence, border control, crossing into Victoria. Not a single person anyway. So we were just surprised. I don't know. We expected a bigger, hoo-ha.
Yeah, no hoo-ha at all. Nope.
So we continued 450 kilometres or thereabouts straight to a street located 3 kilometres from the actual Spirit of Tasmania. It's known as Williamstown Road. You can legally park there with long vehicles. Again, so quiet because Tasmania isn't officially opened its borders unless you have the correct passes and have been in states that weren't hotspots.
Like WA, for instance.
Correct, because we were coming from there. We were able to get onto the Spirit of Tasmania. We rolled straight on. There were 3 motorhomes, 4 caravans, and a couple of...
And a partridge in a pear tree. That was about it.
It was so empty. It was unbelievable.
Not the case since they've opened their borders on the 15th
Fully
of December.
Booked. Absolutely packed. Yeah.
Tassie is bustling with tourists, which is great to see. I'm just back on Williamstown Road quickly. Another great tip for us. If you are travelling on the Spirit of Tasmania at any stage before they relocate down to Geelong, you will know in your researching that there is not really anywhere immediately close to where you come in to park your rig there at Port Melbourne. Williamstown Road is a fantastic option. We came across that on somebody else's blog after lots of Googling and searching on where can we pull up. Of course, you've got to time it, right? If you're coming from somewhere like we did from South Australia or you're driving for a few hours to get on the ship, you need to time it right. We had about an hour up our sleeves after our drive day. So Williamstown Road is fantastic. There is plenty of parking spaces parallel to the road. There was quite a few trucks parked up there as well, so it must be something that the truckies who are transiting over to Tassie do as well. Yeah, so check that out.
And we basically had a meal. We cooked some meal in the van and then grabbed the things that we were carrying on board, because once you're on the Spirit of Tasmania, you cannot re-access your caravan or your car vehicle during sail. It's very important. So, again, another tip, if you've got medication or anything that you need on you for whatever reason, make sure you take that onto the ship.
With you.
Yeah, out of the vehicles. The Spirit of Tasmania, we did a top 10 things to know before you go YouTube video on specifically the Spirit of Tasmania. It is one of our highest ever viewed videos. We'll put a link for that in the description of this podcast. Check it out if you want to go. It is all still very current and relevant, and some great advice there that we gained from our experience and from other travellers. So check that out.
Absolutely. If you're planning a trip to Tassie, it's a great one to have a look at. And if you're not planning a trip to Tassie, we say, why aren't you? It is amazing.
Exactly. All right, we'll wrap it up there. And next week, we are full-fledged into Tassie, 10 weeks of drive itineraries that will blow your mind. You will absolutely love what we have in store. That will include free downloadable itinerary PDFs that my incredibly talented, beautiful wife, Katie, has created.
Thanks, Tal.
Amazing stuff. It really is first class. But right now, let's get to the takeaway from this week. For me, it was really around fatigue. We, being on the road full-time for over 2 years now, unfortunately, you do come across road accidents, and a couple of times have involved road fatalities. These are generally equate to fatigue. So, yes, we've been doing, 3,500, 4,000 kilometres over the last week. Fortunately, we have a 5-year-old, so we're stopping every hour for a...
Yes.
But, even if you're doing 1,000 kilometres in a day, it's definitely doable, but stop every hour and a half to 2 hours. Get out, have a bite to eat, have a cuppa, stop and talk to someone else, walk around your vehicle, do spot checks every time you stop. These are just a couple of things that we would fully recommend. Hearing from that WA police officer of those sort of stats, wow, if this is something that could be prevented, and that ripple effect of how many lives that affects. So anyway, that's my takeaway for this week. Be positive, stay alive, arrive alive, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the newsroom. Dun, 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 sponsored by Toyota.
Yes, we're talking all things a country music festival. Of course, Tamworth, set to celebrate the 50th annual Country Music Festival and Golden Guitar Awards this year in 2022. We love this region. In fact, we were originally planning to attend this event, and of course, as things do on the road and your travel plans change, we were unable to make it. However, the organisers have announced last week that they are postponing the event, which generally attracts a crowd of 50,000 plus people who converge in Tamworth with their RVs, country music lovers from all over Australia and, in previous years, the world. They have postponed this year's event.
Well, it was actually scheduled for last year and it was postponed because of COVID. So, yeah, it's been pushed again, but at least... it's on the horizon.
It hasn't been cancelled.
No,
they are talking about dates in April. If you are keen to attend, definitely jump on their website and check out those new dates. They are going to be releasing updates weekly. Unfortunately, they did need to postpone the event due to the new COVID-safe regulations that have been brought in New South Wales. So there may be a chance for us to get there yet.
Oh, wow. I would just love to go. And what is so fantastic about this region is that it is so large. Nundle, which I think is about 70 hours northeast from Tamworth.
70 kilometres.
Is that what I said?
Hours.
There
you know
go.
what he means.
Wow. Not quite that far unless you're walking.
Just up the road.
In reverse. It would take 70 hours. Nundle is the most stunning countryside environment. The Country Music Festival just filters out through the whole region. So you can see live musicians every day, every hour around the whole region. So you can camp out there. There's free camps galore. And so there's plenty of room for everyone. Don't feel like, it's a massive event.
Yeah, too many people, not for us. No, it is a beautiful part of the world. I mean, it is an incredible festival and, of course, celebrates some of our country's finest musicians. So we'll see. We will have to make some plans.
Bring your guitars. Yep. Fantastic. All right, let's move on to one other news item, and that is that this coming Sunday, the 16th of January, 2022, depending on when you're listening to this, it's 16th of January, Sunday, and that is the 22nd of January, 16th of January, 2022.
Too many twos.
I've confused the hell out of everyone, even myself. We will be doing a live YouTube show. It is our Q&A. We've put the call out for questions. We've already received 100 questions. We are going to collate those into hopefully similar themes or ideas.
Yeah.
If you have a question, drop it to us in the comments or on our social media post around this, and we will be answering all those Q&As live this Sunday night.
Yeah, look, we'd love you to join us, grab a drink, have a chat. It's our first ever live stream. Hopefully we can figure out what we're doing. It'll be lots of fun in any case. And, we will definitely be answering all of those questions. Anything from, travelling full-time, how we survive together 24/7, destinations, experiences. We've had some great questions around rookie mistakes, things that we would do differently. So join us then.
Fantastic. Hopefully our little feel-good family member will make a little appearance. Be like Dickie Nee. You'll just pop and say, good morning, everyone. And then you'll go. We'll see. But, we'll definitely all be here. We hope you can join us. And that is, again, across on our Feel Good Family YouTube channel. All right, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, if you are listening to this podcast as an audio on Apple Podcasts, please do leave us a review. Give us 5 stars. If you love us, share it with everyone you know.
Yeah, look, it just helps to get the podcast out there, to get our content out there. We absolutely love making our content and we want to see it get out there as far and wide as it can to give some inspiration and tips and tricks and, don't make these mistakes that we're making, advice to others who may be thinking about travelling this fine country of ours.
Perfect. Now, next week, that Q&A will be in review. We will be discussing those top questions, our answers on this podcast.
Yes, we might narrow them down to the top 10. I'm not sure we'll get through 100.
Yeah, let's see how we go. We will do as many as we can. Speaking of our little feel-good, he has just woken up. How's that for timing? Love it. All right, then. Well, for now, we'll say dream big, look after yourself, look after your family.
And happy trails.
Feel the journey, feel the love, feel good family.
Thank you for joining us again this week.
Awesome. And here comes the rain, little darling.
I know, it's so interesting when it rains on the roof of the caravan. It is a fairly rare occurrence for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But it is so loud.
Yes.
It is amazing. Anyway, look, we really hope that you are staying healthy and happy and hopeful, and that you and your family are surviving this latest crazy wave of COVID if you're listening in Australia, and that, just look after yourselves and look out for each other.
And join us next Sunday. This Sunday. What am I talking about? Join us this Sunday on our Feel Good Family YouTube live stream.
Woohoo! See you then.
Bye, guys.